a terrible area, it's crime-ridden, etc. Then they built the residential population, started moving in. Everybody said the same thing. Not until Disney came in with Lion King, and everybody brought their children, all the local people brought and looked in the day and said they didn't even know where they were. You know, that's, I think, what's going to happen here. If you asked, in my opinion, the average New Yorker, what's going on with the World Trade Center, they would just say, oh, they're fighting, they don't know. But, you know, Freedom Tower's on the 36th floor. The 14th floor is now rising on Tower 4. All of it's under construction. There are trees actually planted in the memorial. And most of us in New York don't know that. All the tourists know it because they come to New York and they assume they don't know much, so they learn and they see it. We know New York, so we don't need to go learn and see it. And that's really the arbitrage that I saw. So obviously I'm a big fan of this area, but when you have all these statistics, and number one, it tells me at least that I think there's a good opportunity to invest. So this was the first building we did. So, and I'll just give you through the thought process from a micro economic point of view. So we bought the building, and it was occupied by the Bank of New York. They stayed in occupancy in our agreement for 11, 12 months after we bought the building. So we had that flow of income. Then we had to figure out what we were going to do with the building because they were leaving. So in the backdrop was going on was everybody was converting to residential. And by the way, today we've had some 54 buildings representing about 16.5 million square feet converted from residential, commercial to residential, on top of which we lost 13 million square feet in 9/11. So New York, Lower Manhattan here lost plus or minus almost 26% of all of its office space, which was all occupied. It wasn't empty. So that, I don't know another city that could withstand losing 26% of its office space. You know, so thankfully we're building back the World Trade Center because you can't grow a city if you're shrinking it. I mean, it's sort of obvious, and it's critical that we put back office space to bring back population back here. But in '98, all that wasn't happening in terms of 9/11, but there was office space conversion. So what we were looking at here is take this building and convert it into residential, and take a look at it also for hotels, and look at it for office space. So what was the thought process? The office market, it was about $22, $23 a square foot at the time. We have 324,000 square feet here. My worry was we'd have to, gut the building, which we were going to do, renovate it, and then it would take a long time to lease up because the floor plates here are relatively small. The base is about 13,500 feet, and then it shrinks up to, graduates up to, 3,500 feet. So there's not going to be one tenant that's going to take up a lot of space, which meant that you're going to have to do a lot of leases. And if the market had a hiccup in the process and you were in the leasing campaign and it took years to get filled up, one could have a big financial problem. So we kept that in the back of our minds, and we ran the numbers, and it produced a certain income. Then we ran the numbers for residential. Now, in the residential market, what was this building? This building had 192,000 square feet of actual rent-paying space. In the office, it had 324,000 square feet. Same building. The difference is, in commercial, one pays rent if, one can gain rent from a different measurement, which takes basically the gross of the building less some penetrations, vertical penetrations, and then you add back a loss factor to get back basically to the same gross square footage of a building. In a rental building for residential, you actually can only charge on the apartment itself. No corridors, no lobbies, no nothing. So we could only produce income of about 192,000 square feet. But at that time, we were looking at doing what they call shorter stays. You do a one-year lease, but then you're allowed to cancel it under certain conditions. So it's a short-term rental, if you will. That we saw gaining about $65 to $75 per square foot against the commercial, which was about $23, $22 per square foot. Still, you only had 192,000 square feet versus 324. They almost equalized. But we thought we could fill the building faster in residential. So we decided to go residential. Simultaneously, we were negotiating with Intercontinental Hotels and signed a contract with them to master lease this whole building and put a hotel here. And they had a wonderful plan with buyer Blinder Bell and spent a lot of money doing it. And it would produce roughly the same dollars as both either the residential or commercial. So we were torn of what to do, so we pursued residential and the hotel. And my feeling was that we had time to make a decision because one of those uses would, would just, bless you, would come up higher and would ultimately, tell us what to do. So that's not me, is it? Good. We ended up demolishing the building, all the interiors of the building, but we left all of the stairways, left all the elevators, which were due to come out to convert to residential. But I was a little nervous about making that final decision, so we did that last. It took almost 11 months to demolish the interior of the building at the time, because everything back then was built with either cinder block